the mandate given by the First Presidency and the presiding bishopric is to only focus on financial growth. EPA employees are told that the money will be used after the second coming of Jesus Christ or during Armageddon right before he would come again.
One of our brethren some years ago spoke of the payment of tithing as fire insurance. Nonetheless, the word of the Lord is clear that those who do not keep the commandments and observe the laws of God shall be burned at the time of his coming.
We do not say that all of the saints will be spared and saved from the coming day of desolation. But we do say there is no promise of safety and no promise of security except for those who love the Lord and who are seeking to do all that he commands. It may be, for instance, that nothing except the power of faith and the authority of the priesthood can save individuals and congregations from the atomic holocausts that surely shall be. And so we raise the warning voice and say, take heed, prepare, watch, and be ready. There is no security in any course except the course of obedience and conformity and righteousness.
I have faith that the Constitution will be saved as prophesied by Joseph Smith, but it will not be saved in Washington.
Travis Wingoodsall. Because YouTube has banned me from viewing videos, I require the website, the Google search, for news. And so I was tipped off to Axios from yesterday concerning the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So there was church news yesterday, but I didn't find out about it until today. As the other video I did last night was the church news video. In its place. Yeah, the Joseph Smith documents, clearly from the Joseph Smith papers, online, shows that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is not just a fraud. It is a terrorist organization that's scary. Because they wrote the documents. And you can see as you go, year by year by year, month by month, document by document, you see what Brigham Young was doing to plan, plot, and carry out the coup against Joseph and the church. And yeah, it's scary. Because when the church first attacked me in 2008, I didn't understand. I thought it was just Mormons who were being overzealous, fanatics, extremists, to defend the church as they supposed. I didn't think that the prophets actually were signing receipts for those who succeeded in punishing me. But yeah, this is what the church does. They ruin and fire and excommunicate those who fail them. And those who do their job right, succeed, get financially rewarded. Time and time again. This is all criminal behavior that the church is ordering Mormons to do. And so Mormons are complicit in the crimes being asked of them by the church. And as I told you, I'm on wave 5 now, since 2008. Wave 5. It's the exact same pattern, not just YouTube. That's just part of the pattern of cutting me off from the internet and thus communication. And so, yes, there's government officials involved in all of these patterns. And so this was no different. And so, yeah, the government one failed. Succeeded for a month, but then failed. And so, yeah, a government agent of the state of Utah most likely got fired for failing. Because this is a hate crime, not just a crime. This is a hate crime because the church is involved. And because the church is involved, it's a reverse religious hate crime against those who are not conforming and compliant to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The church can't do this. They can't force other people to accept the church and its morality and its standards for youth as adults, etc. Church can't do this. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. They don't have religious freedom to take away religious freedom of others. And so, yeah, this is what I'm a victim of on YouTube, is a hate crime. The Mormon YouTube employee who's rigged the AI algorithm has committed a hate crime on behalf of the church against me. He is not the good guy. Where in the Book of Mormon does it say you can do wickedness and be the good guy? Where? Prove it to me. Show me. Dear God. Mormons just think that by playing dumb, they can do the most vile evil in the world. And this is what we're witnessing with Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow and Mark Hoffman and Brian David Mitchell and the 8 Passengers woman and the Hildebrandt psycho and the whole psycho asylum being shut down here in Utah, and the church firing Natasha Helfer because she used science. How dare you? Psychology is not to be used in science, other than to overthrow science with psychology. And even Avraham Gileadi with Hebrew. He caved and conformed and complied and betrayed the truth. And so me, I can't do it. I was born and raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that taught me to be honest in all I do. I was an Eagle Scout, where I need to be honest in all I do. That I need to report crime to be a good citizen in the community, a good citizen in the nation, a good citizen in the world. That it doesn't matter. I cannot allow my compromising to a religion, to a person, to a government official, to a community leader, to a business owner, if they're committing crimes and wanting me to help cover up the crimes and commit the crimes with them. They must be reported. We have Joseph Smith, who adds to the Book of Mormon about how we're supposed to obey, honor, and sustain the laws of the land. And it doesn't mean, oh, we're living in Nazi Germany, I guess, Heil Hitler. No! He's taking away the agency of other Germans who were Jews. And so, thus, the church, under Joseph Smith anyway, tells you that you have a duty against such authoritarian governments, authoritarian people, authoritarian religions, authoritarian companies, like YouTube. See, what YouTube did was the same bullying terrorist tactic. That when you stand up to a bully who's bullying you, smacking you around, threatening to take your lunch money, day after day after day after day after day after day after day, and you stand up to them and say no, they escalate. That's exactly what YouTube did. I did the videos letting you know of the whole stages of the bullying abuse that led to me getting banned from watching YouTube. You know, they were tampering with my uploading of videos. Oh, uploading is taking longer than normal? Oh, they're not allowing the processing. They're tampering with watching the videos and not counting my thumbs up, not doing the time count with the view count, those kinds of tampering, and then making recommendations for crap when it's supposed to be AI. It's supposed to know what I watch. It's supposed to recommend what I watch, and it won't. And so, and looping the theme song in the description below, nope. They have the loop feature, and they won't loop the songs. And they force me to sign in, because they've stopped the loop. You know, all these little things to bug me, to pester me, to abuse me as a bully. And when I complain, they retaliate and they escalate. They do more stuff to annoy me, to bug me, to pester me. This is what a bully is. So, let's get this over with. There's what's called the Purim principle. It's the Jewish holy day of lots from Ishtar, the Babylonian. Esther. And it comes from Deuteronomy 19, in which a false accuser wants to punish somebody according to the law and lies about what they have done wrong. And when they're exposed in court, they are to receive the punishment that would have been given to the person that they had accused falsely. So if you accuse somebody falsely of murder, and the punishment is the capital punishment of death, you're supposed to die for lying about this other person. You know, if you're supposed to give back what you stole and restore 5, 10-fold, whatever, the false accuser has to give the person that they falsely accused of stealing the item plus 5 or 10-fold. So it doesn't pay to commit crime under the law of Moses. It literally is an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's what it's referring to. That if you falsely accuse somebody and the punishment is a tooth being extracted, your tooth gets extracted. But everybody gets it wrong. Everybody thinks, oh, yeah, if somebody punches you in the face and your tooth pops out, you get to punch them and knock their tooth out. No! That's not what it means. It's for false accusers. And so, yeah, the whole Sermon on the Mount is to teach you how to take people to court. And so people misunderstand, turn the other cheek, and love them that hate you and despitefully use you. You can still love them, but they need to be punished and held accountable for what they did wrong. Otherwise, society is destroyed with people doing whatever they want, turning society into a survival of the fittest, as a winner murders all situation. And so stupidity is running amok in our nation right now, leading to its destruction. Nobody cares to listen. Everybody's just going forward to destroy America. Death to America. So, this false accusation practice, the Purim principle, is being exposed against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints with their push for temples under Nelson. So now we got to do some background history. We won't go all the way back to Brigham Young, who in the Joseph Smith papers reveals that he was using Joseph's absence to begin Section 119 before Section 119 was supposedly written. But actually, no, it was 1838 for that one, wasn't it? Yeah. So it was 132 that they claimed was 1843, and oh my God. Even that, oh my God. The evil of Brigham, setting it all up with the temple in mind, all leading up to the, oh my God. It's just, I'm just horrified. I'm still in horror. I wanted to take the whole weekend off and sleep my weekend away because of the horrors that I realized from the church. Because these are the second to fourth generation descendants of those evil Danites that are all over the Joseph Smith papers, mingled in with Joseph's original work. And dear God, it is scary. You know, I grew up among white supremacists in Southern California. I knew their thinking. I knew their heart, because they were very emotionally upset and enraged and mocking about all the different groups that they hated and wanted to do to all these different groups. And I was horrified as a kid. But now, reading over the Joseph Smith papers, this isn't just I'm supposed to hate you, so I'm going to be mean to you. No, what Brigham Young did was premeditatively plot and did little increments, one by one, in secret combination against Joseph. And he had plan A, plan B, plan C when things didn't fully go through. And he had stages for the process. And so, yes, from the initial joining of the church to the recruitment that they began all the way to the assassination of Joseph and the sex trafficking and human trafficking of Mormons that they wrongfully converted to this valley. Dear God, it is just the purest of evil that I have never seen in any historical culture of the world's history. Brigham Young literally is the most evil man on the face of the earth. See, with Hitler, it was just an expansionist program. You know, we want to expand our empire and hurt the Jews. But no, what this church is up to is far more insidious. And we go to 1981. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints founds the Council for National Policy. They have W. Cleon Skousen. I got to be careful because he's in the underground Mormonism. He's called Klingon Skousen because of his space doctrine. and he's the church's representative on this council. It's the secret combination of America, and it got exposed by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate group against gays, but the Southern Poverty Law Center doesn't fully grasp how evil this group is, because since the latter days with Nelson, we have seen members from this group, including the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, overthrow our government. You know, Steve Bannon and Leonard Leo are the most popular ones from that group, along with the church. And so, knowing that this church is not just false, but pure evil as a terrorist group, everything the church does can easily be connected to not only this group, but the final solution that the church is plotting. And so back in the 80s, the church reverted back to being conservative about temples again. Because I think it was in the 70s, there was an apostle who convinced the president of the church, which I think would have been Kimball, but it could have been previous. I gotta go back to the history on that. But an apostle in the early days, after World War II, used the theory that if you build it, they will come. And so it had to do with the church office building. He was part of trying to convince the president of the church, which that would give us who the president of the church is. Yes, church office building. Construction started 1962, completed in 1972. And so, yeah, it was in the 60s. And so that was post-Kimball, pre-Kimball, wasn't it? List of LDS presidents. Okay, so it's pre-Harold B. Lee, so it's David O. McKay. Yeah, David O. McKay. He was the president that got fooled by one of his apostles to do this investment theory of church buildings. He wanted to make the church office building higher so that it was more prominent and thus prepare for a growth of the church. This was his sneaky way of justifying putting the church into debt. And so that's what happened, is that temples were now being built to expand the church, to get people to want to join the church. Oh, you've got a temple? Oh, this open house. Oh, it's so beautiful inside. It must be the true church. I want to join. How do I join? Oh, we've got missionaries that are giving the tour. Great. Oh, I got to pay you money? Can I pay you more? Oh, just 10%? But there's other ways I can pay you money? Okay. Do you not understand? White supremacists love to play you as chumps. Like I said, I know their thinking. And the church is doing it. And Mormons get mad at me. No, we don't. Church is true. You're lying. And you falsely accuse me. And so, when this was proven to be an utter failure, the church was not getting out of debt quick enough, then the new conservative model was re-implemented, in which you had to have a certain number of members in a location, and it's usually a stake. If you can get 3 stakes in an area with a certain number of elders, and they're paying a certain amount of tithing, that then justifies building a temple. This was the conservative model that the church reverted back to, so that the faithfulness of the saints gets rewarded with a temple. That kind of a thing. And so that had been going on until Hinckley. Hinckley was the one who started the smaller temples. But it was still under the conservative model, but because they're smaller and they cost less to build and thus maintain, they were able to lower the amount of elders who are paying tithing to justify the building of the more temples. But when Nelson took over, and I still remember doing the videos, I don't know if YouTube banned them for porn or medical misinformation with false accusations. When Nelson got up for his first conference to announce the new temples under him, he announced Russia. And I remember checking the membership numbers for Russia. Nowhere near enough, because it needed to be 30 to 35,000 member population, which would have sufficient number of elders. Russia only had 23,000. I still remember that number because I can visualize it. 23,000 is insufficient for the whole of Russia to justify a temple in Russia. Nelson was now changing the building of temples policy. And it seemed like it was more of an investment situation. And then we'd find out in 2019 why he's able to do this. Because the whistleblower came out in December and exposed that Ensign Peak Advisors, for just tithing only, there are several dozen sources of income for the church. Several dozen sources of income for the church, not just Ensign Peak Advisors. And Nelson came out in response and says, so we do the same pattern that we do with Ensign Peak Advisors with every single source of income. So several dozen sources of income, all doing the same thing that they do with tithing. They put 10% into an LLC company, Ensign Peak Advisors for tithing. Australia exposed that the church also puts a good chunk of the money they don't use into an offshore bank account to avoid financial reporting. And yeah, there's money laundering, as Canada exposed. And the City Creek Mall exposed. But, yeah, the church is far more wealthy than we realize. Because if they had $200 billion in 2019, that's only 10% of the total asset value, which is $2 trillion for Ensign Peak Advisors. Because 200 billion is 10% of 2 trillion. And it doesn't cost 800, it's actually 1800, isn't it? Wow. 1800 billion. 1,800,000,000,000. Does not cost that much to build temples and maintain them. If anything, multi-millions. That's it. Maybe we can go into the billions. And so, like the whistleblower was telling us in his YouTube video, the church can be self-sustaining with tithing alone to handle all of its expenses and continue to exist without Mormons giving any further money to the church, with just the $7 billion in interest every year. And so that's a lot of extra money being put into the offshore bank accounts from just tithing alone, let alone from every single other source of income. Several dozen different sources of income. And so when they bragged about the $2 billion they've spent on philanthropy, LDS charities, sure. Whatever. They've already exposed what they do. And so, with this Council for National Policy, it is made up of other evangelicals. It is made up of psychologists. And psychology is not a science. It is a fraud, uses fallacies, falsehoods, if you don't know what a fallacy is, lies. As we have seen the danger of psychology just this year alone. And yet the church is still pushing forward. Family services is psychologically helping to keep the covenant path of its members who are sensitive snowflakes, caused by psychologists in the first place. They're bullies. It's what they do. And so, this is why the church in the latter days, and even right before, but more so under the latter days, is pushing the religious freedom movement. And so evangelicals are going, yeah, great, we love to have an overthrow of our government. And during the 80s, sure enough, televangelists were running for president of the United States, getting involved in government to overthrow the government, to establish the kingdom of Jesus. But they're not Mormon. Do you see what the church is doing here? They are using evangelicals to do their dirty work. And just like Islam. Remember before October 7th last year? The church for 2 years was meeting with Islamic government and religious leaders. I'm sure it was to talk about the church. Yes, and Joseph Smith had a first vision where he saw Jesus. And here's the Book of Mormon, another testament of Jesus. Screw the Jews. Just like you. They are all about business deals. Remember? Sources of income. And so, yes, the church paid for the Ukraine war. The church paid for the war against Israel. And yes, Islam is using the tactic of false accusation against Israel. Because every single time, whether it's a hospital or refugee camp or kids that get blown up, time and time again, it's always because Hamas was using the injured, the women, the children, the refugees, civilians as shields. To enrage the rest of Islam, who already hate the Jews of Israel, who already want them out of the land that belongs to Israel. So they purposely lie, purposely false accuse Israel, time and time and time and time again. If I were able to continue to watch the news, I would still see the same cycle of abuse and false accusation of Islam. We would see more exposures of the UN protecting Islam and covering up for Islam and supporting and fighting with Islam. See, I don't need to watch the news to know what's going to be in the news in the future, because I've already know about their practice, their pattern of practice of criminal and terrorist abuse. Those refugees who come to America because of their religious abuse, are they giving up their religion once they are free from their religious abusers? Nope. I still see the women here in Utah wearing their religious abuse, the symbol of the garments of the religious bondage and abuse. You know, like Mormons wearing the magic underwear, which is no longer magic after Oakes explained it's a symbol of your bondage. There is no magical powers. Which has to do with the temple. And so yes, all of the crimes focus around using the temple to commit the crimes, to commit the abuses, to hold Mormons in bondage, to go out and recruit through pyramid scheme process others to pay the church money, to pay the prostitution price for your bride. Because your marriage isn't valid in this church, you've got to pay the prostitution price and go to the Mormon temples. And now under Nelson, he's putting out just a whole ton of temples. Conference after conference. You know, upwards of 20, I think. Haven't there been? And so all of this is possession of land around the world. And he who owns the land has power over the people. Because the people can't live on the land if it's owned by somebody else. You have to pay the people who own the land. It's supposed to be the government, but church buys the land. Where is the land in Russia, by the way? Do you know how Russia does business? No? You don't know about a honey trap? You're not familiar with P-tapes? Is there a P-tape, Nelson, when you went in 2013? Is there? We really want to know. We don't want to see it, but we want to know. Dear God. And so the church is trying to be sneaky and prevent the evangelical community as well as the Islamic community from knowing what they're doing. But Nelson has been doing it at such an extreme rate that evangelicals in America are getting concerned. Now remember, this Council for National Policy incited evangelicals for the religious freedom movement, and they focused initially on gays to try to ban and prevent gay marriage, and the church got busted on Prop 8 in California back in 2008. They got caught tampering with an election. And they got a slap on the wrist, and I guess they got away with it, but there are documentaries and all sorts of people upset with the church for their taking away agency of others. And so then under Obama, he passes a national gay marriage act so that gay marriage is now equal with regular marriage. And so the church is pissed, and they use religious freedom now with 2 lawsuits that result from evangelicals against gay couples who want to purchase a wedding cake for their gay marriage that's now federally approved nationwide. The one in California and the one in Colorado. And the church tampered with those judgments. A friend of the court brief saying that religious freedom needs to have dominance over the economic rights of an American citizen to purchase from a corporation. And during this time, we're also seeing others across the nation who are evangelical, who are now beginning to use it for other businesses. We heard the horrors of medical doctors refusing treatment for children of gay couples because the child is adopted by a gay couple. The church got out of the Boy Scouts because of gays. The church got out of their adoption agency, human trafficking, because of gay marriage. And the church is just extremist on this situation, in which people are making the excuse, I'm sorry, my religious standards and values does not accept you. I don't love you because my religion says I'm supposed to hate you because you won't conform and comply to my religion. But if you join my religion, I can then love you. I have no problem loving you once you join my religion and accept and conform and comply. Not how it works. That Jewish law of love, that's not what it means. There's not supposed to be conditions. That's the whole thing. The whole Corinthians thing, the church gets away with it because we use the wrong translation. So we think it's charity. But Christians got a better translation. They know it's love. And they're not using it. They're purposely using their religion as a weapon against anybody they disapprove of and hate. And so YouTube, the community guidelines? Whose community guidelines? You're a worldwide company. And so yes, Utah, thus Mormon, community guidelines. Bastards. And so yes, YouTube took away my agency. They committed a hate crime in behalf of the church's morals, standards, and values to protect the church from criminal exposure. And so, as evangelicals, way back in the 80s, even though the church founded this group with evangelicals, they were getting the banned Mormon video. I can't remember what it's called. I just talked about it the other month. And knew what it was then. Banned Mormon cartoon. Godmakers. Yeah. And then there was a Godmakers 2 that also came out. And Tom Jones, my neighbor, fellow peer, white supremacist, evangelical, born-again Christian, was telling me all this stuff that he was learning from his pastor about how we worship Satan with the inverted pentagram, how we can't drink coffee and can't drink Mountain Dew. What's coffee? And stuff like that. And so he got into an argument with me saying his church was true, my church was false, and that we'll find out who's true and who's false when we're dead. Well, South Park would eventually solve this dilemma for us, as the Mormons. The Mormons are the one true church. What? Just hilarious. It's on YouTube. I'm a good Protestant. Why am I in hell? So, yeah, evangelicals have never accepted Mormons as Christian because the evangelicals in this council only have the Scousins as the church's representatives. And so, in order to get the evangelicals to do all the hard work for the church has been getting all these temples built worldwide, accumulating a mass amounts of money in this criminal operation that they're doing. See, the church is working as a secret combination inside the secret combination. And so these evangelicals think that they're doing it for their kingdom of Jesus. But the church is doing it for their kingdom, with their Jesus. And that's why this temple scandal has now hit the fan. Because evangelicals and apostates have said, no, we're putting a stop to Nelson's push for all these temples, which are an investment for the coming days of Jesus, who's waiting for you up in the clouds. Don't fear the Reaper, Mormons. See, the Jewish Christ, he's not in the clouds. That was a sign in the heavens. He's right here on earth. You missed him. You're all doomed. And so, yes, disputes surround new Mormon temples around the West. If you hadn't been paying attention to the church news with me, you'd miss that the church prophets were specifically going around to the different states, not just the West, but around the world, but for the purpose of getting more temples built. All an investment deal. Business deals are going on here. And this is Axios, and it was yesterday. Aaron Alberti is the one reporting this. And so it's talking about the Texas City Council telling the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to design a smaller temple after planning officials voted against the towering structure. See, it's a smaller temple. The steeple is taller. And so they're claiming as the church ramps up temple construction worldwide, and again, there's no cause for it. There's only 3.5 million Mormons left. The majority of Mormons have left the church. But because of the abuse of the church, they don't tell their bishops and sign the official documents. And the church knows this because they keep track of sacrament attendance. The prophets know the church only has about 3.5 million members left. That's why last year I covered in the church news, Nelson changed to say, hey, if you just pay any amount in tithing, you're a participant. And then would betray you and say that the recommend still requires that you be a full tithe payer. And so the disputes are over the height, light pollution, traffic congestion, and there's more, because the Heber one brought up also land use. You know, it's not conforming to a green environment. It's a polluting carbon fingerprint environment that the church is doing here. They're not putting solar panels on the temples to cut back on the polluting energy used for the lighting, that type of thing. And so it's not light pollution as as electric pollution. Light pollution is that, there are areas where they want to see the stars in the heavens. I've seen that. Even in Utah has that. But up in Rexburg, up in Alberta, there are those who like smaller population centers because they don't like the crowds of people and the type of culture that a modern concrete jungle changes in the world. There are those who want a house, not even in the suburbs, but out in the rural areas, because they hate people. They want the land to roam. They want to be separated from other people who they consider heathens, and so on. They are not capable of living with other people. Did they not go on a mission? Were they spoiled brats on their mission? How did you end up married? Because it's one thing to have to be with a guy 24/7. It's another thing to be with a female on a regular daily basis. We just don't think the same. But, dear God. And so, driving the news, Fairfield, and the outskirts of Dallas, they're demanding the church lowers the size of the temple. And the church can do it, because the steeple doesn't contain any part of usable space. But the church is stepping up and saying, no, we are not going to give up on this. We are not going to allow you a foothold on our foothold. And so, this is not about the temples and the height, even though that's what they're using as their excuse. Because their real reason is because it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They're not evangelical. I am very surprised that they're not using that very argument of religious freedom to say the majority of the people in Fairfield, Texas, are evangelical, and their religious freedom rights are being violated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I am surprised they're not using that argument. Because the churches where was that? Yeah, there it is. The Fairfield mayor, Henry Lesner, said last month that a church attorney similarly threatened to sue the town and accused the multi-billion-dollar faith of bullying. Yeah, that's what the church is doing when they're suing to say, no, we must have our towers. Which are not used as towers, they're used to have Moroni at the top. Which is not Moroni, it was supposed to be Nephi. But again, the church lies. But regardless, the church orders Mormons to attack. And in this particular case, they send out their attorneys. Get them. And if that attorney fails, he'll get fired. And so Wyoming, likewise, that's the other one. They're having a legal battle back and forth in Wyoming about the size of the temple. as a construction point of view, financially, it would be cheaper not to have a steeple. But I understand you got to have the iron rod to keep the church temples from being struck by lightning. Because that's a great fear and concern in the church from section 85, verse 8. And so, yes, the church is being seen as bullies. They're being seen as abusers, enforcing religion upon people who don't want to be Mormon. And so, yes, I'm very gratefully, I'm greatly surprised that they're not countering by claiming the church is threatening their religious freedom. And they don't just say, no, you're violating our religious freedom rights. This town is a Christian town, and Mormons are not Christian as we are Christian. So, Las Vegas, where the city council is considering approval for a new temple in rural Lone Mountain neighborhood. Opponents told the Salt Lake Tribune last month they've been targeted with harassment from those who want it built. Mormons complaining of an atmosphere of intimidation. And so Mormons in the area where the temple is to be built on the other side of Las Vegas are threatening the neighbors to allow the temple to be built there, rather than going, why don't you want a temple? It'll improve your property values. Just let us come in and talk with you. What could that hurt? Why don't you just come to church once? Have you prayed to feel if the Book of Mormon is true? There's no harm. And then there's zoning hearings that are also going on. Have descended into religious insult, prompting suspicion that the temple opposition is motivated by an anti-Mormon, antichrist, Korahor apostate bias. This is the church's response. Bullying! And the lack of transparency. This is exactly what YouTube did to me. The church is bullying me. I report and warn you, and YouTube bullies me with intimidation, claiming that I'm the one who's bullying them. And so, as you can see, I'm not able to shut down YouTube for their bullying practices. But the church, as this is a pattern of practice for everybody, it's biting them with the temple issue. And so, yeah, the church is purposely doing this because of the final solution, this election. They've already got the land. And so now they're diverting attention away from the fact that America is going to fall this election. and that those who own the land will have the power. Church already has the land. And the church is distracting away from this by being stubborn over the size of the steeples, to lead people astray from the real cover-up that the church is lacking transparency in. And that's the Heber City Temple complaint, that the church is lacking transparency. As the approval for the temple didn't follow the letter of the law and lacked transparency. And now the church is joined in a lawsuit. So, yeah. This is what's going on. Don't take your eye off the ball. The church wants their kingdom back. And so anything to distract and to cause controversy is for that ultimate final solution goal. To rile people up, to make the church the victim, etc., etc. Because that's what bullies do. And I'm not involved in any of this. I'm just reporting it. But I'm going to be attacked now.